Good evening, everybody. It's Steve with Real Progressives. I have a fun night tonight, boys. I am so excited about this. I have explained to you all ad nauseum that modern monetary theory is not Republican, it's not Democrat, it's not LOL libertarian, and it is certainly not any other political persuasion. It is simply just what it is. It is. It's like I am the I am, MMT is the is. It is the description of how our federal financing works. It's a description of currency wherever it exists. But more importantly, it is the keys to the kingdom for us moving forward and progressing. And one of the most beautiful things that I've tried to explain, and I hope that you all will listen to, is the fact that Republicans love their kids too. And Republicans, when they understand the certain touch points that matter to them, and they understand MMT as well, you can create massive coalitions to get shit done. So tonight, I've been able to bring on a guy who I've followed for years, who's an exciting guy, who is one of the few Republicans that I know of that actually understands modern monetary theory and is actually running for president. So without further ado, let me bring on my guest, Mike Norman. Welcome to the show, sir.
Steve, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited. I have to tell you, I've done years and years of television. I was with Fox News for 10 years. Before that, other networks. I'm a little bit nervous here tonight, a little bit nervous, but very happy to be here nonetheless.
Well, no, you could be Republican, you could be Green, you could be LOL libertarian, you can be whatever the heck you want to be. The fact is you understand finance, you understand federal financing, and you understand the fact that this debt bullshit, this debt fear-mongering, the deficit nonsense, it's all nonsense. And it's not only nonsense, but it's simple, stupid kind of nonsense that after a few minutes of being exposed to it should inform everyone the possibilities that are before us. You did a great video on RT that I've been sharing the hell out of, which is this whole thing about the debt as a myth and so forth. Let's just kick things off and explain what is our debt, what is our deficit, and who is Mike Norman?
All right, well, I'll start from the last one first. I am Mike Norman. I'm an economist by education. I've been on Wall Street as a trader for about 40 years now. And look, I started out, my education as an economist was really in sort of the neoclassical vein, which is what is taught in schools. Unfortunately, it started at the top schools. I went to Wharton at the University of Pennsylvania. I did a master's at UCLA, and it's taught this brand of economics, which fundamentally kind of misunderstands our monetary system. It's really kind of still taught as if we are in a gold standard or a fixed exchange rate. So, but I coming out of school and then starting my career off on Wall Street, I was of that view. I mean, and it's funny because I have old videotapes of me appearing on television where I used to argue exactly these kind of arguments that are so flawed and wrong that you hear all the time on TV. America is broke. We're out of money. We're borrowing money from the Chinese. We're so in debt. We're going to implode because of the debt. And I believe these things because that's what I was taught. And that's what mainstream economics, the profession, the pseudoscience teaches everybody. But then I met a guy in 2002, Warren Mosler, who's one of the, I guess you could call him the founders of MMT, one of the original guys. And I remember being invited to a little seminar group at Bloomberg at their headquarters here in New York City. One of the journalists said, Mike, you should come over. Yeah, this guy's very interesting. I think you're going to like that guy. I went over there, and, he's talking about, he's saying all this stuff like imports are a benefit and exports are a cost, and we don't have any debt. And I got very agitated and I was really rude. I said, you don't know what you're talking about. I got up in this group and I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. You have it all wrong, buddy. You have it all wrong. I was telling him. But then the seminar ended, and on my way home, I was thinking about it. And then as it so happens with many people, when they get introduced to MMT, if they're thoughtful people, if they really reflect on it, a light goes off in their head, a light bulb goes off in their head, as I'm sure it did with you, Steve, and you say, wait a minute, that is how it works, right? The government is a maker of dollars. Everybody else is a taker of dollars. It's not, there's only one place that it could come from. And all of a sudden, all these ideas started to fall in place, and I started to realize that sort of the vast belief system that was out there, not just as a belief system, but something that controls our society, something that controls our politics, something that controls our policy, and it's all completely wrong. It's all completely wrong. So from that time, and that was back in 2001, 2002, I don't remember, I kind of, dedicated myself to putting these ideas out there. I launched a blog, and I go around and I talk to people, and I'm very active, as you know, on Facebook, and I try to educate people on this. It's not an easy thing to do because people are very much attached to this belief system, and they have a resistance against really trying to open up to a new idea. But on the other hand, like people like you, Steve, and this group, and I'm sure you agree with me, it's incredibly gratifying when people get it, right? When they get it and they start to see, but at the same time, it's not only gratifying, it's maddening, it's frustrating, because as you said, you see the world as it can be, and we are so far away from that. I have to tell you that, one of the reasons I put myself out there to run for president is I am sick and tired of hearing people say we are out of money. I am sick and tired of hearing people say we borrow from China. I'm sick and tired of hearing people say, we got 20 trillion in debt. You asked me about the debt, and I say, let's start off with that, on that subject. It's a great subject. The 20 trillion, we have no debt. We paid for everything in dollars. The 20 trillion represents the sum total of all the dollars issued, spent into existence by the federal government since 1789, right? Minus everything that was taken away in taxes. So the 20 trillion is $20 trillion that resides in the hands of the non-government, the people, firms here and throughout the rest of the world, and they hold the 20 trillion in a treasury, which is basically like a savings account. It would be like you holding your money in your bank in a savings account as opposed to your checking account. You got a deposit in your checking account, and now you switched it into your savings account. But the important thing is we don't owe anything. We own. We own. That's the difference. We own those dollars. We don't owe. They've been paid. We received it. The government paid it. We received it. To take that back, to get rid of the debt, literally means to take away the 20 trillion from everybody, in the aggregate who holds that 20 trillion. And that would be devastating. That would be terrible. That would be a depression. That would be a catastrophe. But this is put out there, right, as the prudent thing, the thing we must do, the wise thing. I'm telling you, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely. And Mike, one of the things that brings me to this point every freaking day is that, you listen to Bernie Sanders. God love Bernie Sanders. He sat there with Stephanie Kelton, and there's nobody that knows the stuff better than Stephanie Kelton. And yet there he goes saying the same nonsense about paying for stuff, and we've got to reduce the deficit, and on and on and on. And, I'm going to give him this much of a pass in that, having just done this, I don't know, for a couple of years, day in, day out, as opposed to you, who's done it for 20 years or whatever here, you see it, man. Politicians are not there to change the world in terms of how you think. They're there to get elected.
Yeah.
And so he can't do anything if he's not elected. And us, you and I, we can provide air cover to politicians. And so as we speak this stuff, people sit there and their heads explode as you explain to them that there is no debt, that the reason you have been starving for health care, the reason you've been starving for, food and having no jobs and on and on is a decision made by our government, made by the powers that be, and it's up to us to change that paradigm. I'm not looking to Bernie Sanders as my Jesus Christ. I'm looking at us as the change agent. So talk to me a little bit about the resistance that you've experienced over that long haul, because you spoke to it eloquently. We know what the log jam is. People, first of all, I think people are genuinely mentally lazy. They don't want to have their core beliefs challenged.
Right.
Number two, the only kind of finance most people understand is the way their household budget works. And I know for a fact that when I write a check and there's no money in the bank, it bounces. Oh my God, I've got a fine. I'm kiting checks. I'm in trouble. The federal government's vastly different as a currency issue.
It's exactly opposite. It's exactly opposite. First of all, the big problem is that the federal government's finances are constantly conflated with that of a household. And as you correctly put it, we don't have the ability to, I can't issue Mike Norman dollars. You can't issue Steve Grumbine dollars, all right? So, that is a massive and very important distinction. And you find this distinction even lost among top-level economists who go on and on about, we have to reduce the debt, otherwise interest rates are going to spike. I always find it fascinating that, Steve, if you think about this, in 1980, when Ronald Reagan was elected, the national debt, the so-called national debt, was $800 billion and interest rates were 20%. The debt now is $20 trillion. So what's that, a 25-fold or a 20-fold increase or something like that, 25-fold, and the interest rates are zero. So, it went the exact, so wouldn't you think any legitimate science, if economics is going to call itself a science, wouldn't you think any science that would call itself credible would look at the empirical evidence and say, that's not matching up with the theory, and they go back to the drawing board? But no, only economists keep saying eventually it's going to happen. One day it's never going to happen. I'll tell you something, Steve. When the U.S. debt rating, when the credit rating got downgraded, and I always said that was going to happen. I said it was going to happen because the rating agencies are idiots. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't understand the distinction between, as you said, a currency issuer and a currency using country. When it downgraded, I remember being on TV. I was called in on TV that morning. The stock market was down 600 points. I said, you got to buy. And not only that, buy treasury bonds because the yields are going to go down. After that downgrade, you would think if your credit gets downgraded, you're going to have to pay more for a loan, right? The government's credit got downgraded. The rates went down to historic lows. And then again, the economists, they just sat there saying, well, it's temporary or whatever excuse they came up with. No science in the world, in the history of the world, that would call itself a credible science would sit there when the empirical evidence not just doesn't match up, but is diametrically opposed, opposite to the outcome that they predict. And yet, these are the people who run policy. And I'm sick and tired of it. And we need to break through this. And, you talked about Bernie Sanders. I'm glad you brought that up because I was very excited about Bernie Sanders as well and excited when Stephanie Kelton came on to help him as his chief economist. But you're right. Then he kind of tempered his argument and he kind of made, he wanted to kind of make it palatable to the mainstream. So, we got to bring down the debt. No, my philosophy, Steve, is you got to go in there with a sledgehammer now. It's too late for this. We're going to make everybody happy. Either we got to break through. You called it a logjam. You're right. We got to break through this logjam somehow. We got to use direct language. I'm a big believer in communication in the words. I'm not going to hold back. Some people might like that about me.
I love it.
People might not like that about me, all right? But I'm not going to hold back. If I'm going to be a bull in a china shop, I'm going to be a bull in a china shop. But, we can no longer, as a society, as a country, as a people, limit ourselves. We can know this country has so much abundance, and they want to cut They want to cut education. They want to cut healthcare. They want to cut infrastructure. I can't even drive my car on the roads here in New York. I mean, the potholes. We need to make these investments in infrastructure, in healthcare, in education, in basic science and research, in transportation, in alternative energy. And guess what? We can do these things. There's no financial constraint on our ability. The only constraint is the real resources. Do we have the labor? Do we have the brain power? Do we have water and the things that we need? And the answer to that is yes, 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 yes. The finances, that's unlimited. That is unlimited. Nothing could stop us once we understand this, once we break through this incredibly limiting belief system. It's like some crazy belief system of some primitive tribe. It's so debilitating for us and for the world, not just for us as a country. I care about America, but it's screwing up the whole entire world, except for a few people.
Yep. Let me say something, because somebody asked a question, and I think it's worth making the point. They said, what's important about Mike Norman, aside from the fact that he's an MMTer? Republicans have lost all credibility. Okay? And I want to answer this and see if you agree with my assessment here. If I was running for office and I opted to run as a Democrat, I would be shunned. I would be laughed out of the room. I would be called a libertarian. I would be called a Republican. I would be called a capitalist. I'd be called any number of things because I support modern monetary, not support it, because I acknowledge truth. I acknowledge reality, macroeconomic reality. And that means that we don't have to tax people through the nose to get these great things, which means that we can build bridges to the other parties so that the tax issue is not our logjam. So, but the flip side, if I'm a Republican, and truth be told, I was a Republican for a very, very long time in my life. I'm no longer, but was. And during that time period, if I would have run as I am today, Republicans would love me for the stance that I'm not going to raise their taxes. I'm not going after these types of things, but they would call me a friggin' commie or a liberal or whatever, because I would be pushing for social programs. I would be pushing for all the things you just laid out: education, healthcare, high-speed rail, whatever, all these other things, green energy, you name it. And so what happens is that because people are stuck in this worthless duopoly, they don't recognize the fact that both of these parties are so flawed. The only thing they do is take the opposite position of the other. They don't actually have a moral compass. They don't actually have a blueprint for how to get from here to there. They are literally just, hey, we're the opposite of them and nothing else.
But there's a hypocrisy in there too, because like you said, if you ran as a Republican with these ideas, they would attack you and call you a socialist or a liberal. But yet the Republicans, whether they realize this or not, they totally embrace MMT. They totally embrace Keynesian economics when it comes to military. I mean, where does the money come from for the military? By decree, Congress says, okay, now we're going to spend, $1 trillion on this war, or we're gonna build, hundreds of billions worth of new ships for the Navy. So that's the hypocrisy of it. And you mentioned the Democrats, Steve. Think about this: like they're floundering right now. They got beaten in the last election. They've lost state houses left and right. They've lost governorships. You just saw that election out there in Montana where the Republican guys slammed the journalist down on the floor, and they still couldn't win. Why? Because they've given up. I mean, you would think that coming in as an MMT to the Democratic Party, they should embrace you with open arms, because these are the ideas of FDR. These are the ideas that lifted America out of the Depression. These are the ideas that created such popular programs like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all these kinds of things, but they go away from it. They abandon it. I remember the Clintons talking about when Obama was president, the Clintons were talking about the grand bargain for Social Security. And what's the grand bargain? That was cutting Social Security on this phony belief that it's going to run out of money. When you say run out of money, you have to say it correctly. You mean, because when people say to me, it's going to run out of money, I just ask them a simple question. You mean we're going to run out of dollars? You cannot run out of dollars. You know, it's like saying we're going to run out of gravity and everyone's, a certain amount of people are going to fly off the earth. You can't run out of gravity. You can't. When people say, how are we going to pay for it? You say, with dollars. Very simple. And then they'll say, what do you mean? Like, you're going to print the dollars? Yeah, because all government spending is printing money. See, I'm going to bash through these beliefs, even if people say, oh my God, he's going to print money. Oh my God. It's a push of the button. It's not coming off a printing press. But I want people, listen, I want to shock people because that'll break down some of the resistance. It'll force them. Some people will then sit back and think about these words, these concepts, and they're going to come to a realization. They're going to have an epiphany that, hey, yeah, this is true. This is the way it works. We're not limited that financially. Think about it, Steve. How ridiculous is it that in this day and age, we're walking around with cell phones. We're communicating instantly. Look at me and you having this conversation. We're just a decade ago, this was impossible. We're doing all of our electric cars, self-driving cars, and we still think we're digging our money out of the ground.
Yes.
You imagine like some aliens. Imagine aliens right now that exist somewhere out in the universe. They're looking through a powerful telescope. They're looking at us on the planet Earth, and they're like, those earthlings, they're looking in the ground for their money. Like, the planet's been around for 5 billion years and, humans have been here for what, 1 million years or something. They still think the money comes out of the ground. It's electrons. You can't run out of electrons. You can't, so we are literally keeping ourselves down. We are keeping ourselves down. But there's another aspect to it, and we have to address this. There are people in power. There are elites. There are the people established, very, very powerful. And let's be honest, they don't need to change the system. They're doing very, very well. They don't need to change the system. But you said it before, Steve, with Bernie. Bernie had a chance. Okay? Nobody really knew Bernie. Yes, he was a senator. He was in politics, but he was not a senator whose name rolled off the tongue of people. Okay, he had a chance. He mobilized millions and millions of regular people in this country, disaffected, left out, left behind, frustrated, who knew that there was a different way, and then he blew it. He blew it because he was afraid. He was only, willing to speak honestly to a certain degree. And then he wanted to fit in. You can't do that. You can't do it. It's not going to happen if you approach it that way. You got to hit it hard. You got to break through the misconception. You got to destroy this belief. You know what I say about a belief system, Steve, is that a belief system is like a disease in the body. If you don't eradicate the disease, it will kill the body. And this is what is happening to us right now. We are killing the body. We are killing the body with this disease of terrible thinking that is keeping us from achieving our potential. I mean, it's a sad thing. It's a frustrating thing. For me, it's a maddening thing. I want to fight against it. I want to take it down. I want to rip it to pieces. I want to rip it to shreds and open things up. We could have a utopian society if we just understood that we are limiting ourselves with a flawed and completely wrong belief system.
You said something that I think is very important. I want to make a very, very clear statement, okay? People have beliefs. You look at the folks that push Marxism, they're ideological. It's almost like a religion. They're not thinking about what is possible based on the underlying reality. They've got a religion. They want to fit all the facts into their religion. You look at the friggin' Ayn Randians, they've got a belief system. They've got a religion. They want to fit all the facts to fit into that. So this goes right into what you're saying. What I love about MMTers is we are infiltrators. We are absolutely out there willing to crush any system there is to prove once and for all that we can do great things. Your position as a Republican notwithstanding, people might get offended by that. I personally am looking at all kinds of infiltrations going on all over the place. I support the draft Bernie for a People's Party, not because I think Bernie is somehow or another Saint Bernie, but because I believe that the people that are still trapped in that cesspool, the only way they're coming out of that cesspool is by someone like a Bernie leaving that cesspool. And like Moses guiding these people out of that freaking hellhole. In your case, I'm looking at you and I'm saying to myself, you got assholes in there holding up a friggin' snowball trying to talk about climate change on the right. I mean, I remember all the crap being a former Republican. I look back on it, and the only thing that I can appreciate anymore is the fact that, number one, I don't want to raise taxes, but everything else beyond that, I couldn't stomach it anymore. So I'm a proud independent at this point. I'm looking at you and I'm saying to myself, you have so much charisma. You are so witty and so smart. And I'm not saying this to lavish praise me. I'm just being honest here. You could literally take over an independent campaign and blow the lid right off of it. But I can respect the fact that you can go into a Republican Party, speak their language, and get them to do what the Democrats suck and refuse to do, and that is serve the people. I'm not a Republican. I'm not going to be a Republican, but I support you because I know who you are, and I know what you stand for. And you really are a progressive, whether or not it's in a party or not is irrelevant. I literally don't know too many policies that you support that I wouldn't support. And that's the thing right now, as a real honest-to-God independent and a real honest-to-God MMTer that understands how economics works, instead of this bullshit, we got to find money to pay for stuff. I mean, how many people have to die so people feel comfortable with the party? How many people have to die so that they get their rocks off talking about debt and deficits? I mean, do you know how many bozos from Occupy Democrats still freaking hype the fact that Obama reduced the deficit? What the hell, man?
You know, this is also one of the great purported achievements of Bill Clinton. Like this, the Democrats are still, well, you know, we had surpluses for 10 years. And it's like, that when I hear that, you know, and it really goes back, if you think about the demise of the Democrat. Look, it's summertime now. We have some beautiful beaches out on Long Island. I drive out from the city here along a road, a gorgeous, gorgeous, beautiful road along Jones Beach that was built in 1934, Steve, the FDR, the Work Progress Administration. Gorgeous, some of the nicest beaches and seashore line that you see. You don't see that being done anymore now. If you see that, you know, they're building some freaking condos for billionaires who live in China or something like that. They're taking our neighborhoods away. They're taking our schools away. They're taking our hospitals and our stores and our entertainment away so they can put up these things. Or they're giving a tax break. Where does that money come from? The tax break, right? That's actually, again, that's an MMT concept. All right? So, yeah, I mean, you know, you talk about the pride of reducing the deficit. That was ridiculous. That's like literally saying the federal government has to save dollars. It's the maker of the dollar. Like I said before, the government is the maker of the dollar and the taker of things. The non-government is the taker of the dollar and the maker of things. So that's the relationship. If the government needs to provision itself, the private sector, you, me, firms, the rest of the world, we make the stuff because we need the government's money. Why? The government imposes taxes and it only accepts its own currency for payment of taxes. So that creates a demand for it. That's people say, well, you know, it would be worthless. It's not worthless because that need to satisfy a tax liability, which is imposed as law by the government, imparts value to the currency. It makes it ubiquitous. Even if you don't need to pay taxes, somebody else does, so you could use that currency and exchange it for something else. We, as the non-government, we are the maker of things and the taker of dollars, and the government is the maker of dollars and the taker of things. And that is the relationship. It's not we, when they say, oh, you know, we gotta, our taxes have to fund it. No, we are not the makers of dollars and the takers of things. It's the other way around. So it's just a false concept, and it's perpetuated. It's perpetuated for a lot of reasons. You know, it's perpetuated because of ignorance, you know, number one. It's perpetuated because it benefits a certain group of people, as I mentioned earlier, and those people tend to have a lot of influence, a lot of power. They don't need to change the system. But we are far more numerous than they are in terms of numbers. We can defeat them. You know, they might be Gulliver, we might be the Lilliputians, but there are many more of us than them. And if we come together with this realization and this understanding of the immense opportunities we have and abilities we have, when we realize the true nature of the system, not the way it is presented to us, we can defeat these guys. We can get rid of this ideology. We can get rid of this belief system, and you know, we could really build a great life for everybody, not just a few people, for everybody.
Real quick, I had a goal of going through your tweet right now, but I want to give you an opportunity. We've got one of those end the fetters out there who salivates over the private bank nonsense and all the other gibberish that comes with the whole conspiracy-minded thing. You want to take a shot for the fences real quick? I'll tee it up here, put it up on a tee, and let you take a swing.
Go ahead.
Well, you know, the guy's basically saying the government no longer makes the money, private Federal Reserve does.
Well, I don't know of too many private companies that are required to turn over all of its profits to the Treasury, nor do I know of too many private companies where the directors of that company are nominated by the president and confirmed by Congress. So it's a stretch to say that it's private. Now, the member banks of the Federal Reserve, yes, those are, you know, private, publicly owned companies, private companies. You got the JP Morgans, the Citibanks. But the Federal Reserve itself, all right? I'm not talking about the way it's structured. The Federal Reserve itself, its direction, that means its top people, you know, the chairman and the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee, that sets policy. Those are people who are appointed by Congress, and the Fed itself was a creation. The Federal Reserve Act in 1913 was a creation of the government, and it can be eliminated in the same way that it was created. So, you know, I hear this all the time about how it's private. There are many things the Fed does which I'm not necessarily in agreement with. But it is not a private organization, and that's just a fact. That's just a fact.
I love it. I mean, for me, it's one of those things, Mike, where we have these fools, and I mean, they really are foolish, okay? And we end up spending more time letting people die to satisfy these end the fetish people. I mean, they are out of their minds with lunacy and ridiculousness. The Federal Reserve is merely a scorekeeper, as far as I understand it to be. It's a clearinghouse. It does a number of things, and it handles and conducts monetary policy. The fact of the matter is that Congress is the only one capable of creating net financial assets.
Right.
Why? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I go to Giant Foods tomorrow and they give me $1 off coupon, they've just printed money, have they not? I mean, we're talking about money. These people have this fetish about money, and they don't realize the fact that a stamp is money. Coupon is money.
Right.
Freaking baseball cards, if used for whatever, are money. They can't print U.S. dollars, though.
Right.
And when a bank makes a loan, et cetera, they're not out there actually creating net financial assets. They
Right.
are producing IOUs, debt denominated in dollars, but they're like chase bucks turning into a dollar.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. It's a very good point that you brought up. Is first of all, let's start with a regular bank, a commercial bank. When a bank makes a loan, yes, it makes a loan out of thin air based on your credit worthiness. You come into the bank, the banker looks at you, he looks at your finances. He says, all right, Steve, you're a good guy. You have a decent credit score. I'm going to give you a loan. So boom, yeah, a deposit is created out of thin air in your checking account. But at the same time, an asset is created for you, but a liability is also created for you. Okay, so there's no net. You said it. There's no net creation of financial assets. For the bank, it's the same thing, just reversed. They have an asset, which is the loan, and they have the liability, which is the deposit in your checking account. And by the way, it's the same thing with the Fed. The Fed is a bank, exactly the same thing. The Fed can't just net create money. It could lend money, all right, or it could exchange assets. Like when the Fed was doing all that quantitative easing that everybody was screaming, oh, they're printing money, they're printing money, right? And they were saying, oh, it's going to be hyperinflation, and the dollar was going to crash. And I said, no, that's not going to happen because all it was a giant asset swap, right? They were taking away a treasury, and they were giving back a deposit, a reserve balance, which is a cash deposit in the banking system. So we're equal, right? They take $1 million in treasury. Let's say they buy $1 million in treasuries, and they put $1 million in cash. Steve, let me ask you something. If you had 10 million in treasuries and I had 10 million in cash, do you think that I'm richer than you? No, as a matter of fact, we'd still be hanging out at the same country club, okay?
That's right.
You might even be richer than me because your treasuries earn some interest. My cash doesn't. So the irony is when the Fed was doing all that, when they were buying all these treasuries and everybody was, they're printing money, right? They were literally unprinting money because when they took those trillions of dollars of 2.46 trillion, that's the number I know because I look at it every day.
Yes, you do.
2.46 trillion of treasuries, 1.77 trillion of mortgage-backed securities, so 4.5 trillion altogether. They took away the income that was generated by those assets. So, and you were able to see it very clearly if you looked at the charts. The interest income went way down. So they didn't print money. They unprinted the money. And they can't print money. Even if they wanted to, the only entity that can print money is the federal government. Because let me tell you something. Anyone who gets a Social Security check should understand this. Because when your Social Security check comes in the mail or when it's deposited directly in your bank account, guess what? You're $1,000 richer or $2,000 richer, and it comes with no offsetting liability. That's your money to go out and spend exactly as you want to spend it. Where did it come from? It came from thin air. Okay? But now you got $1,000 more. And you could do that for the roads. You could do that for the schools. You could do that for the healthcare. By the way, look at Trump. He wants to do infrastructure, but he's proposing this cockamamie public-private partnership. What the hell is that? Did Eisenhower, when he built the interstate highway system, did he say, let's do public-private partnership? If he did, we still would be building the damn interstate highway system. What he did was he deficit spent. Guess what? He did. And you know something? To this day, we are benefiting from that. Every single thing that you have on your body there right now, Steve, everything in your house right there, everything in that room came to you on a truck somewhere, which rolled on that interstate highway. And if we didn't have that deficit spend, guess what? It'd be probably still on its way to you. You never would have received it yet by now because it'd be on some dirt road somewhere. That's what you do. That's the way you do it.
This guy, Todd.
Hey, one more thing, because I'm sure some people are thinking, well, Mike Norman, you're going to be Zimbabwe, you're going to be the Weimar Republic. And I'm going to tell you people right now, no, that does not happen. That absolutely does not happen. Because when you create, it doesn't matter if you print money. If you create more things, more stuff, more supply, the price either stays the same or goes down. Okay, that's what happens. You don't create a Zimbabwe, and those are the wrong analogies. And people who say that, they don't know what they're talking about, because you cannot equate a broken, corrupt country with no economy at all like Zimbabwe to the United States, where we have everything here. Everything. You know, we only use 74% of our industrial capacity. Why? If you were a corporate manager and you were not maximizing your output, you'd be fired. You'd be kicked out. But here it's okay. Here it's okay. We got all this capacity and we're not using it because we're afraid to push a button on a computer.
That's right. So, okay, let's talk about one more thing, really, really important thing, right? So the federal job guarantee is a very, very vital aspect to most MMT practitioners in the academic world, in the activist world, et cetera. What is your position on the federal job guarantee?
Well, you know, I'm for it. You know, I believe in a minimum income. That's more, you know, that's more what I'm into. That you know, some minimum level of income, which the federal job guarantee does. I think the proponents of the federal job guarantee would argue that it's not only about the income, but it's keeping a skill level, which is understandable. You know, like in general, employers don't want to hire people who've been out of the workforce for a while because they may feel that their skills have, you know, deteriorated or whatever. So the job guarantee would ensure that people are working and could be, you know, at a skill level where eventually, if they want to move out of that guaranteed job into a private sector job, that, you know, they would be attractive to employers. But here's the thing, you know, and we're seeing this. Robots are taking over more and more of the production work, the actual output of the nation. What's going to happen? I posed this question many times. What's going to happen when, and we're getting to that point very, very rapidly, what's going to happen when robots make all the stuff? So in other words, we're going to have the same, if not more, output. In other words, when I say output, that means wealth, real wealth, food, clothing, shelter, abundance, right? We're going to have the same output, but who's going to get it? Only the people that control the robots and nobody else? So I think we are rapidly moving away from, you know, a job guarantee, because the jobs are going to be done by robots, but you're still going to have people with the income to consume that output. All right? Because if that is not the case, think about it. Think through to the logical conclusion. If that is not the case, what happens is there's not enough to either, number one, all of the output goes to a very few people who control the robots, which would be insane. You'll have a few trillionaires with way more than they can consume in terms of everything, you know, housing, food, leisure time, vacations, vehicles, or you have a situation where there's not enough income to consume that output, and then the output falls, and then you don't have enough to take care of it. You don't have enough. So you really have to have the income there. So I'm for, you know, some guaranteed level of income.
Let me ask you a question, because this is something that we go back and forth with all the time. You've got the Roger Malcolm Mitchell Monetary Sovereignty School that pushes a basic income. And then over on the MMT side, largely you have the job guarantee based on pegging the economy to labor. Now, the terms that I've grown to know through various people that I've spoken with, from Ellis to Pavlina, and each of them have a very different way of viewing this. You know, we have the idea of redefining what a job is in terms of the public purpose, in terms of jobs that are not necessarily profitable today, but would be wonderful in our communities. Like, I'll give you an example. My kids don't get to go to choir and music class anymore. They go once every 3 weeks because we can't afford it in the schools. My kids don't get to play sports like they used to because we can't afford it. I mean, there's so many things in the communities that are not done because it's not profitable.
The arts.
All that. So I would take a different position on that because I view job very differently now that I've expanded my mind to what I consider to be the public purpose.
Okay. Well, let me say this. Under that, and you said it right. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up because under that definition, if that were allowed, if that were included, I'd be all for that. And just think of what an amazing society. I mean, people could unleash their creative potential, their creative drive. I mean, it would be amazing. It really would be amazing. So yeah, if that became the classification of a job, then I'm all for, let's go for the job guarantee. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, crafting it in that way would be wonderful. It would be fantastic. I'm all for that.
Well, see, here's the way I view it, right? And this is before I understood pegging the economy to that. It allows Republicans, and this is coming from my Republican side, and being a Republican yourself, maybe you'll understand the logic here. This is in no way, shape, or form make work. This is not dig a hole, fill a hole, dig a hole, fill a hole. And nor is this working for the man. This is local communities deciding what they value and then putting jobs out there so anybody can work in that community. And you can travel around. You're instantly mobile. The people in Flint, Michigan, you give the finger to those bastards that are leaving their water right away. I mean, there's so much stuff here, in my opinion, that increases mobility, in particular because so much of our society has been, and I'm going to go to a very important subject that you love, and I've got a post of yours to back it up. But the identity politics that we use out there to divide and conquer and destroy any real progress, what I see as the federal job guarantee is the ultimate equalizer. It is the ultimate lift for communities that are impoverished or generational poverty, et cetera. And these people that are stuck in these hellholes suddenly have the ability to uproot and go where they really want to go. But you made a very, very good point. I'm going to bring this image up here on the screen, and I'll read it to you so that the crowd understands what we've got here. And this was one of my favorite posts you did.
Yeah, there it is.
You said the Clintons destroyed the Democratic Party. DESTOYED. Bill Clinton's embrace of balanced budgets and the selling of the concept to the Democratic establishment via his surrogates like Robert Rubin as some great good killed any chance for a progressive economic agenda forever. This is why the Dems are losing in every election. They cling pitifully to identity politics, which few people give a shit about, and which is a subject that is naturally very divisive.
Yes.
But that's all they got. Meanwhile, their traditional constituency, working people, are hurting badly, and they have nothing for them. Nothing.
Nothing.
You said it better, man. That is spot on, Mike.
Thank you, man. And I'll tell you this right now. If I walked into a Democratic meeting here in New York City, and I can, I mean, I'm not wedded to the Republican Party. But if I walked into a meeting and started saying that stuff, and you would think from, the drubbing they've gotten over the years now, electorally, you would think they would latch on to it, but no, they will shun these ideas. They will attack I just cannot understand it. I mean, this is the party of working people. It's the party of FDR that I spoke about earlier. They gave us the New Deal. They gave us Social Security. They're the ones who want to take away Social Security. I'm telling you, if Social Security goes away, it's going to be because of the Democrats, because they're going to be on board to do that. It's really, when I look at that, I just it blows my mind. It blows my mind. And Clinton, here we go again with the balanced budgets. We're suffering from, I mean, you could see this. You could see it in the numbers when he balanced those budgets. Because what is it that the financial balance of the government is equal but opposite of the financial balance of the non-government. So if the government runs a deficit of whatever, 10 billion, then by definition, the financial balance of the non-government went up by 10 billion, right? Look, Steve, if I'm the government and you're, the guy, and I give you $10 out of my pocket, your balance went up $10. I have a deficit of $10 in my pocket, but let's say my pocket could just make money, okay? My pocket could just print money. I gave you $10, your balance went up. I have a deficit of 10, but it doesn't matter because I could just, make it again. So when they balance the budget, they're taking the $10 back out of your pocket. They're taking it away, and they're saying that's some kind of a good thing. That's a good thing. In the old days, when we were on a gold standard, yeah, the government had to do that because it needed gold. It had to get your money to buy the gold. But we're not, newsflash, everybody, we're not on the gold standard anymore. We went off of that in 1971. And as a matter of fact, in the Depression, the United States was one of the last countries in the Depression to go off the gold standard. You could see every country that went off the gold standard, they came right out of the Depression. The United States waited to 1933 or 1934 to get off the gold standard. FDR, he made it illegal to own gold here in the United States. We were still on a gold standard internationally until 1971. But right after we went off the gold standard, boom, we came out of the Depression. And people still think, Alan Greenspan, when he was still Fed chairman, he said something very interesting, and I posted it many times. I posted it on my blog. I posted it on Facebook. But back in, I don't know, maybe it was 2005 or something like that. And maybe I'll put it up again after this interview. I'll put it up on my Facebook page. But he was asked by Ron Paul, of all people, right? Mr. Goldbug. He was, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Yeah, it was Ron Paul. He said, do you think we should go back on a gold standard? And Greenspan said, no, I don't think that would be advisable. But anyway, we still act as if we are. He said it right there. We still act as if we are on a gold standard, which is absolutely true. This nonsense of we ran out of money, we got to bring down the debt. That's all tied into a gold standard type of monetary system or fixed exchange rate. We're on a floating exchange rate. All right, we went to a the whole world went to a floating exchange rate pretty much back in the 70s. Why? Because it was better. It gives us autonomous monetary policy, supposedly autonomous. We don't do it like it's autonomous, but, it's like getting a car with a really big engine and then still thinking, you're driving a little Volkswagen or something like that. I mean, sorry, you got a 427 Hemi, use it. It's like, use it, man. Everybody's dying here except for a few people. I mean, you got the financial power to do whatever you want. Use it.
I want to ask you a question because this is one of the things that it makes me sad. I'm going to just say it like that. It makes me sad because as a progressive and as someone that looks around at the community, our group is sadly, woefully taken over largely by these conspiracy theorists that are they don't know anything about Forex, which is your friggin' specialty. They don't understand anything about, exchange rates and what like the petrodollar is. And they've got 1,000,001 fantasy land, lollipop stories that they tell each other. They'd rather sit there in Birkenstocks and an acoustic guitar telling stories about what the petrodollar is and the BRICS and Russia and China and Libya and the gold, the dinar and this and that. Please, can you help set the record straight about this whole concept of the BRICS are going to take over and the dollar's going to die and blah, blah, blah. Can you just attack that whole world reserve currency thing?
That's because we always move on to a new fear, right? It was like first, they're going to downgrade the credit rating. and it's going to be the end of the world. When they downgraded it and it was nothing happened. Then the Fed's going to do quantitative easing, and then we're going to have hyperinflation. And they did that, and nothing happened, right? So these conspiracy theorists and these quacks, these kooks, they're looking for something else. So now it's going to be like the dollar's no longer going to be the global reserve currency. You know, well, let me tell you something. Yeah. If somebody, and you know, that might happen too one day, but listen, Japan doesn't have the global reserve currency. It's a very wealthy country. You know, Germany doesn't have a global reserve currency. It's a very wealthy country. I mean, we don't need to have it, but if it happens, I'll tell you this right now. It's not going to happen because the rest of the world gets together in some big conspiracy and gangs up on us and abandons the dollar. It's going to happen because we do it to ourselves, because we believe that we want to be like China. Like we want to work like slaves for low wages and build stuff that we need and then send them off to some foreign land for somebody else's currency. I mean, we got a great deal going on here where the Chinese, they work their butts off. They get paid slave wages. They send us TV sets and textiles and toys and all this freaking great stuff for really, really cheap. And we give them a little paper currency and they're totally happy with that. Look. There's only one way, and that some other country is going to supplant the United States dollar, you know, with their currency. They're going to have to be willing to run perpetual trade deficits, because that's the only way the rest of the world will be able to acquire that other currency, right? I mean, we don't. Here's the thing that's always stated the wrong way. It drives me crazy. You have these idiots. You know, these quacks who are saying, you know, we're profligate spenders, you know, we're not disciplined. It's not like that at all. If we spent nothing, we would still have a trade deficit, because the rest of the world, in order for them to get dollars, which they, by the way, they not only like to have dollars, they need dollars because, for example, oil is bought and sold in dollars. Oil is priced in dollars. They literally have to sell us their output in order to acquire dollars to buy oil. So, I mean, even if we bought nothing from them, they would find a way. They would find a way to run a surplus with us just because they have to get the dollars to buy oil. So it's not, we shouldn't beat ourselves up and say, oh, we're profligate spenders and we're undisciplined and we're running deficits. No, it's them. It's the rest of the world that need the dollar for whatever reason. They also like to you know, save in dollars because to them it's a stable currency. It's a good currency. It's a, you know, there's a million reasons. But let me just say this. Even if it goes away, and I predict, I'll go on record, and just like I predicted that the credit was going to get downgraded, I'm predicting that we will lose the dollar as the global reserve, not because the rest of the world gangs up on us, because we do it to ourselves. But guess what? It won't mean anything. It'll change. You know, in the course of that happening, the composition of our economy will change. In other words, we will work hard and build things and send those things away to foreigners, as opposed to us working a little bit less and getting those things from foreigners. All right, that's the only way. That's the only change you will see. We're not going to become depleted. I mean, if we become depleted, it's by our own, by doing stupid things like austerity. Look at Europe. Here's another great example, Steve. I was talking before about economics as a pseudoscience, as a joke, when nothing in the empirical evidence matches the prediction. You've had how many years of austerity now that has been devastating in Europe, right? You have people killing themselves, committing suicide because they can't stand it anymore. They destroyed Europe. You know, I lived there for 10 years. I used to love going to Europe. I wouldn't even go there anymore. It's garbage with this, what they did to it. And the economists are still there saying, we still need to do more of this. We still need to do more of this. I mean, it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. They do more of it, and it gets worse and worse and worse, and never once do they step back and say, you know what? Maybe this is not working. Maybe we should do the opposite thing. No, they say we just need to do more of it. We need to do more of it.
So, talk to me about Greece. I mean, this, to me, I'll give you my take, and let's just see if I smell even in the zip code of Greece, okay? Well, the way I understand the Greece problem is, first of all, they gave up their drachma.
Right.
And they went to the ECB and went into the Eurozone and now are a currency user like Michigan or Puerto Rico or any number of states or cities, et cetera, in the U.S. that are having troubles. So what they did was they gave up the right to print their own sovereign currency and are now debt slaves to the Troika, and they have no way out other than to possibly take back their monetary sovereignty, which then in turn would isolate them massively. I'm sure there would be a massive global scale crushing isolation that would occur.
For a little while, but
the point I'm making is they would be able to survive because as long as they have real resources in their country, which they do, you have access to the sea, you have access to so many things, they could get back on their feet. I mean, talk about Greece for a second.
Look, and Greece is a beautiful country. I used to go there every year in the summertime, back in the 80s. I love Greece. So here's the thing about Greece, right? It's a fascinating thing because, for all those years when Greece had the drachma, it was a mismanaged country. Yeah, they had bouts of inflation, but there was never a problem in paying pensions to the pensioners. There was never a problem in, mass transportation running. There was never a problem in people having jobs. There was never a problem in, the banking system functioned and all that stuff. Yeah, you went through bouts of inflation from time to time, and people would they would gripe that, our leaders are corrupt. Well, what else is new? It's everywhere. Okay. But the point is the country functioned. You never had, it was impossible for it to go insolvent in the drachma, and everybody got paid in drachma. Their pensions were in drachma. They maybe felt some inflation, some loss in purchasing power. But that's a trade-off. I mean, then they gave up their currency and now they're losing their pensions. Jobs have been cut. Unemployment is way, way up. They don't have the free education anymore, all this kind of stuff. And they're in a constant, it's not even a recession. I mean, they've been in a constant depression now for, 7, 8 years. I remember seeing something one time that really shocked me. And I think it was back in 2010 when there was a lot of social unrest in Greece, and there was a lot of protest against the austerity and everything like that. And I remember one time seeing on the news that a guy in protest, he lit himself on fire. Self-immolation. He committed suicide right in one of those main squares by lighting himself on fire. And the response of the government was not like, in any way empathetic, like, what are we doing? Like, these are our people. These are our citizens. We have to care for them. They were completely ignored this guy's plight and the fact that he killed himself and the plight of so many people. And they said, well, we're just going to acquiesce to whatever the bankers say. And I said to myself, a country like, where the rulers are basically saying, screw you to their own citizenry. And, we're going to do what the bankers tell us. I knew they were lost. I knew at that moment they were lost. When the leaders turned their backs on the people like that, in such a callous fashion, heartless, callous fashion, all right? I can understand in a society there's going to be protests against certain policies, but here you are, you're gutting out the nation, you're gutting your citizenry, you're destroying it. If you think about Greece and its history, oh my God, think about Alexander the Great, one of the great military leaders of all time, the greatest general, one of the greatest. He must have been rolling up. Can you imagine if he was alive today, seeing how his country genuflect to these bankers, these idiots, these morons, right? In there. Oh my God, I want to wring their necks. I know these guys. I know a lot of these guys. I want to just, oh my God. But what a history, what a country, country that created mathematics, a country that created, modern plumbing. I visited Crete, I saw, Knossos, the Minoan society. I mean, the most advanced society, 3,000 years before Jesus Christ. I mean, what they created, and this is the way they end up. So yeah, you said it right. If they went back to the drachma, they would certainly experience, probably some vindictive backlash from the finance capitalists of the world who want to just, they want to grind everyone down and suck the blood, the Goldman Sachs's, right? And all the others. But then, and they get some inflation, like who wants the drachma? But guess what? You'd have maybe, 200 drachma to the dollar. Greece is a beautiful country. You'd have instant tourism, instant who's not going to go to Greece for a summer vacation if it costs you, $500 to go there for the summer and have a beautiful vacation? You'd have people flocking there. So very quickly, the thing would turn around. And this is the thing I don't understand, Steve. I don't understand it. Like the people with all their hardship and all their misery, they want to stick with the euro. Look, they just voted for this Macron in France, right? They want the euro. Like they don't connect the dots. Like your problem is the euro. It's not austerity. Austerity is a symptom of the euro. The problem is the euro. You don't make the euro. That's the problem.
That's right. That's right. So I want to talk one quick second before I jump into your candidacy here about the idea of the difference between a net importer and a net exporter and how it's okay. People panic about us being a net importer versus an exporter because they really don't understand. And quite frankly, if you look at the cause and effect right now because of the inaction of our Congress, being a net importer can feel pretty yucky at times because the jobs that we envision do go away because we're not producing things in this country, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Point in case, how many bridges are in ill repair? Full truth and knowledge. Most bridges we ride on today, we're taking our life in our own hands. The roadways are a disaster. Our energy grid is putrid. We're still on IP version 4 in this country. We haven't even converted to IP version 6. There's so many things about our base infrastructure. The levees are still breaking.
Air traffic control.
On and on and on. Our entire infrastructure. Instead of trying to twist Tootsie Pop ties like Laverne and Shirley, we could be out there creating educators, creating medical professionals, creating great blue-collar work in terms of welders and bridge repairmen, you name it. The list of jobs that are undone in this country is spectacular. It is unbelievable. And so our Congress, by inaction, makes being a net importer a brutal experience for the low end of the totem pole. So what I'm trying to say to folks is that stop worrying about whether we're a net importer or a net exporter, but let's make sure our Congress reacts to whatever those conditions are. And we don't react. We have this rote belief that we must be this, we must be that.
Yeah.
And we don't deviate. People have no idea how to survive in a net importing nation. And MMT can provide the knowledge, in my opinion anyway, this is one of the things I want to clarify, that as a net importer, we definitely are freed up to focus on the things that are killing us today.
First of all, I don't see why any country would want to be a net exporter unless you need to get some other country's currency. And certainly a country like the United States, where, as I mentioned before, we're only using 74% of our industrial capacity. So it's a lot of, a quarter of our entire industrial capacity just sitting there idle. Like, why you want to build stuff that we need? Everybody needs cars and clothing and electronics. And then you want to go to work. You want to build those things that we need to have a high standard of living, to define, to be the very definition of what a high standard of living is. And then you want to send it away to somebody else. Like, think about that for a second. You want to go to work. You want to toil for 8 or 12 or however many hours a day. You want to build beautiful finished products. right, that we all need in our lives to live a high-level life. And then you want to send it away so you can get a Chinese yuan. I mean, think about how crazy that is, right? That's what we want to do. This is literally, and I'm not talking about the Republican, I'm talking about both the Republicans and the Democrats and everybody and economists are saying, here's what we got to do. This is going to save us. We got to go to work and we got to toil for 8, 12, 16 hours a day. We got to build beautiful things like computers and cars and, clothing and beautiful things. And then we got to send it away to foreigners so we can get a Chinese yuan. That's going to be beautiful. Instead,
it's astounding.
Instead, we denigrate, we criticize, we're going to kick back, we're going to work, a little bit, and we're going to get really cheap, we're going to get beautiful cars, we're going to get computers, we're going to get nice clothes, we're going to get furnishings for our house, beautiful furnishings for our house, and we're going to have all this extra time to have leave. No, that's no good. That's terrible. And guess what? For all this beautiful stuff that we're getting, this amazing stuff that brings us to the highest standard of living of any society on earth, we're going to print up some little dollar on a piece of paper, and we're going to give it to those people in those faraway countries, and they're happy with that. And we're getting all this stuff, and we're living so nice. And they're saying, no, that's terrible. That's bad. We don't want to do that. We want to do the other thing where we work our asses off, build beautiful shit, use all of our resources, our water, our minerals, and send it all away. That's what we want to do. Think about how crazy that is.
It's ridiculous. See, I look at it like this. You'd mentioned way back that the stuff that came from back in the Eisenhower era, et cetera, all came from deficit spending.
Yeah.
And I look at it like this, right? I'm saying we've got so many things that people are saying we can't afford nice things. We can't have our bridges fixed. We can't have our roads fixed. We can't have our schools upgraded. We can't upgrade our infrastructure. We can't upgrade our energy grid. We're willing to stay stuck on fossil fuels because, you know what? We're broke and we can't change. All these things that people say they care about. We care about healthcare. Okay, well, prove it. We care about green energy. Liar, prove it. We care about this. We care about that. But then when you say to them, hey, we want to stop twisting the ties on the Tootsie Pop, and we want to go ahead and get some health care taken care of, they go, oh, we got to be we got to be an exporter. We got to start building things in America again. Damn it!
Well, hey, look, I'm all for building things here. Let's go deeper into my argument.
Sure.
And we'll say, well, Mike. Somebody could say, well, Mike, that creates jobs when we export because there's demand outside of our country. Yes, that is very true. But what about this as a solution? If you ensure that the citizenry of this country has sufficient income to consume all of what we're capable of producing, then that simply means what I just said, is that we put everybody to work to maximize our output. Instead of using 74% of our industrial capacity, we use 100%. So you put people to work so that they have enough income to buy what we can produce. And then, let's say everybody's satisfied, everybody has what they want. If we could still make more, fine, then we could export the rest that, the surplus that we don't need. But it's ridiculous to keep everybody down and say, well, we'll tap into the demand overseas when, we can have that same demand coming right here domestically and people could have the things that they need and they could have jobs. We could create the jobs right here and build the stuff right here. But we don't allow ourselves to do it. It's another one of those crazy things where we say, no, we got to keep, we got to keep ourselves running at 70% of capacity, and we got to send everything else overseas. It's ridiculous. Just ensure, and this gets back to that minimum income thing or the job guarantee, ensure that the people of this country have sufficient income to buy the output that we can produce. Very simple. Very simple. I could do this in 10 minutes. If I was the leader, I could do all of this stuff in 10 minutes. We could fix the entire infrastructure. We could have universal health care, no problem, and it won't be expensive. Why? You said it before. You create more, you mentioned, educate more people to be doctors, educate more people to be nurses, educate more people to be medical technicians, provide the funds to create the medical equipment that you need, the hospitals. Because then when the supply goes up, what happens? The price stays the same or it goes down. That's the way you reduce medical costs. That's the way you reduce medical costs, right? And this is a supply side concept. This is a Republican concept that they don't even use. This is supply side economics, which they just use that to justify it for tax cuts for rich people. But you can use it for good stuff too. Hello? Yes, you can.
It's amazing. See, this is what has happened to us as a nation. We have gotten so into this Boolean thing that if Party A says X, Party B must say Y. And if Party B suddenly says X, then Party A must say Y. And instead of actually just saying, forget the party, what do we need to do to survive? What do we need to do not just to survive, but thrive?
That's the thing, man. I'm not into labels, Steve. I'm not into labels. People could call me what they want. When I was on Fox, 10 years I was on Fox. I was the odd man out because I was sitting there on panels arguing with these idiots who didn't know what they were talking about. They call me socialist. Yeah, call me whatever. It's stupid. I think labels are stupid. Labels are for people who cannot think. They need to compartmentalize everything because it's too hard for them to really see the nuance or anything. They don't want to, thinking is work for a lot of people. We were talking about that. You and I, you mentioned that before, that, we're not going to get, there's going to be a lot of people who are not going to ever buy into the MMT because they just don't want, they don't want to think. Thinking is work. But you know what? And you mentioned this about the conspiracy theorists, like, what do we do? Steve, we just keep moving ahead. This is my credo. This is my philosophy. Just keep going like a locomotive, like a bull. I'm just going to keep going ahead. Keep moving ahead. We're going to get people on board. We're going to get people on board. People are going to see. And the more people who come on board, like doing this show here tonight, we're going to get some converts. We're going to get more people off of that. The ones who want to stay in their little, crazy world of fantasy and conspiracy, that's fine. But I'm just going to keep going forward like a locomotive, just going and going and going, knocking over everything in my way, using the language, strong language. I'm not going to dilly-dally or, pussyfoot around anything. Yeah, we print money, okay? So what? All government spending is money printing. Get over it. We don't dig it up out of the ground anymore. And guess what? That doesn't create inflation. It does not create inflation, all right? So just keep going. I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep pushing, and people are going to come on board. People are going to come on board. I'm telling you, man.
You are in rarefied air here because, first of all, I get more attacks because they don't like my style. But the reality is, if we don't get people to understand lives are on the line, the people are dying because of this moronic idea that taxes fund spending, this moronic idea that we're broke, this moronic idea that Social Security is broke. We can't do shit. We can't change anything if they don't stop this moronic belief system. And I don't give a shit if they hate me, because I'm here to wake them up. I'm like a human punch in the mouth, an alarm clock.
That's it. That's it. And I could fix everything. I could fix everything. And, I know how to do it, and I'm not afraid to do it. And I'm moving ahead with this. And as much of a long shot as it might be, I am moving ahead with this, and I can fix everything. I can fix everything, and I will fix everything.
I love it. All right, Mike, I'm coming back. Can you turn your volume down a little bit?
All right, I'm on a different computer. I don't even.
Don't worry about it. It's just the full echo now. I just want to say this, and I want to thank you for your time. I really hope you'll come back because you've got a huge audience. I mean, we had great turnout. They loved you. It's important that we see that progressives, Republicans, all of us come together and make big things happen.
I will definitely come back, man. I will definitely come back. We should do this on a regular basis. I'm ready. I'm ready.
You got it, man. All right, so I'm going to end it on this note. Thank you, Mike, for joining us.
Let's say one thing.
Please. Oh, by all means. Yes.
Because people out there like me, I set up a GoFundMe site for my presidential campaign. It's GoFundMe.com/Mike Norman for president. Any amount that you could donate would be greatly, greatly appreciated.
Awesome. With that, I want to say thank you all for joining us. Folks, let me just say this as a point of reference I think is very important to understand. It doesn't matter if Mike's a Republican. It doesn't matter if he's a Democrat. It doesn't matter if he's an LOL Libertarian. What matters is the truth of the economics he's talking about. It doesn't matter if you like every policy position he takes. It doesn't matter if what you can trust is he's not going to lie to you and say that taxes fund spending. He's not going to lie to you and act like we're broke and we've got to eat our peas. He's not going to lie to us and say these things. So this is one of those opportunities where you can see how monstrous of a coalition we could create if we stop lying about taxation funding spending. We could have a Green New Deal yesterday, but instead we keep perpetuating this lie. Once you understand this and the light bulb goes on, man, we've got a huge country and we've got a lot of people that are ready to make change happen.
Right, man.
All right, Mike, thank you so much. You have my support, and I can't wait to have you back.
Thanks so much. It was a pleasure.
All right, have a good night. Everyone, thank you so much. We'll see you soon. By the way, Warren Mosler will be with me on Thursday night as a teaser. I'll have Warren Thursday night. Should be very exciting. Thank you all again. Have a great night, everyone.